Hello everyone, Storm here, and today we're back with part 2 of What If Omid Survived. You guys seem to really enjoy the first part, and who can blame you because it's Omid, who's a pretty cool character, so now we'll get to see what he does in A New Frontier. You guys seem to really enjoy the first part, and who can blame you because it's Omid, who's a pretty cool character, so now we'll get to see what he does in A New Frontier. Luckily for us, the endings of Season 2 are very similar to the canon ones, just with Sarah as an extra character if you kept her alive. Omid also has his own ending, but it was mostly the same as the Kenny ending in canon. No matter what, Sarah will end up dying or being lost during the time skip, as we cannot keep her around due to her status as determinant. Plus, it shouldn't be that hard to think of her dying out of all people. Since Clem got to pick between Omid, Kenny, and Jane at the end of Season 2, we can cross off the other two endings and just stick with Omid going into Season 3, as he's the only one that matters for this what if to continue. And just for the sake of the story, we're gonna hope he doesn't try to teach Clementine how to drive, or at the very least he wears his seatbelt. Anyway, some time passes and the two get trapped and end up meeting Ava, who tells them about her group, The New Frontier, mentioning that she got separated from her friend recently. Luckily, that friend returns and saves them from the walkers keeping them trapped. As Omid and Clementine investigate, they are shocked to see that this friend of Ava's is none other than Krista. Omid and Krista lock eyes, immediately dropping anything they're carrying as they run into each other's arms, embracing for the first time in years. Now I know almost no one is going to complain about me keeping Krista alive, but I do want to give some sort of explanation for those of you wondering if it's realistic. Even with Omid being there during the bandit attack in Season 2, Krista surviving isn't very likely, especially if Clem doesn't help him distract the raiders. If you look at my What If Lee Survived series, spoiler alert, you'll notice that they had Lee and Omid as extra people, and the whole group was together so they could better defend each other. So if it takes something of that level to keep Krista alive, I doubt Omid throwing a rock would make much of a difference. However, since Clem can help Omid distract them, I'd see Krista being more likely to escape in that path, albeit probably bearing some sort of wound. I'll say she's got a bad leg going forward. But honestly, the decision to keep Krista alive was chosen because I know things become really stale when A New Frontier focuses so much on Javi and his family, so to add an extra character just standing there in every scene is really boring. I try to stay realistic with these stories all the time, as that's pretty much the point of asking what if this happened, but for this one, I thought you'd enjoy it more if Krista and Omid could reunite. Plus, I'd love to explore how being separated and Krista's place in The New Frontier affects their relationship. So with that, let's finally continue. Due to Krista being a part of Ava's group already, Omid and Clem would join very quickly. I'd like to imagine Omid telling Krista all about what has happened in Season 2, how they reunited with Kenny, why they're now taking care of a baby, and how they actually went to Wellington. Krista is happy to hear that they made it, and she views AJ as a second chance for her after losing her own baby. Very much the same way that I talked about how Omid feels in Part 1. She'd tell them how she learned about the importance of groups when they saved her from a miserable fate of limping everywhere alone while barely surviving. How she made connections with Ava and David. When AJ gets sick, Omid and Clem are dead set on stealing medicine for him, with Krista being on board as well. Krista manages to snag the vancomycin when no one is looking, giving it to Omid in order to administer it to AJ away from the camp. However, Omid and Clem get attacked by walkers drawn from AJ's crying, forcing them to run back to camp. This awakens the others, and they fight the walkers. By the end, David demands an explanation from Omid and Clementine on why they were out with AJ. They struggle to create lies, but Lingard tells David the vancomycin is missing, causing him to immediately piece things together. Krista tries to defend her husband and Clementine, but ultimately David can't accept disobedience and thievery. So he banishes the two from the group, causing Krista to leave as well. They try to take AJ, but David refuses as he doesn't want him dragging them down. Krista has her leg injury, Clementine is still a kid, and Omid isn't exactly the most hardened survivor. Adding a toddler with extremely specific needs isn't going to help them out there. Without the means to stand up to David and the rest of the group, they're forced to part ways with AJ. However, later on, Ava approaches the three to make peace, giving them some supplies. She also gives them a drawing from AJ, telling Krista that she convinced David to let her come back if she wants to. He genuinely enjoyed having Krista around, and she's the closest person to Ava. Plus, she can keep AJ safer this way, assuming he does survive his sickness. Seeing this offer, Krista is torn, but Omid tells her that she should go. They both know how much AJ means to them, and having any way to ensure his safety is key, even if it means they won't see each other again. Krista ends up in tears, asking what about him, but Omid smiles and says that they've been gone without each other before. Everything will be okay. She's finally found people she can be with without being scared or worried about what they might do. She deserves to have that. And so, with much hesitation, Krista returns with Ava to the camp, leaving Omid and Clementine alone again. Some time passes, and Clementine ends up saving a man named Javier Garcia from a member of the New Frontier. She decides not to rob him, but does think he owes her his van. They go back to Prescott, where she introduces Javi to Omid, and they discuss the situation. Omid and Javier would likely find lots in common on the urgency of keeping families safe. Clementine confronts the guy who gave her dud bullets, but luckily she doesn't lose her temper too much due to Omid being there. Because of this, that guy makes it out alive after a rough up from Javier, and agrees to return double what Clementine paid in exchange for him walking out. The gang informs Trip of Javi's current struggle, prompting him to offer to take him to the junkyard tomorrow in order to help him out. Javier later also meets Eleanor, and she offers to take him to the junkyard that night. It's up to him which one he chooses, but Omid will only join assuming he goes with Trip, as he doesn't want to go behind his back like that. Omid being there doesn't change much, of course, as they all still escape, with Clementine and possibly Javier staying behind to fight the New Frontier. We can then fast forward to Prescott being attacked, which also doesn't change, with the exception of Omid surviving. They work on a plan to make it to Richmond, but Omid would be more open about the situation both he and Clementine have with the New Frontier. He explains the story and how he has a wife with them. Surprisingly, he's optimistic about all of them joining up again, even though both he and Clementine were kicked out. Maybe with a big place to call home, they can be reinstated. Due to this knowledge being out there, Conrad doesn't try to confront Clem and Javi, so he survives. He just has a more malicious plan for Clem and Omid, in that he hopes to sell them out for his group's safety. Clementine doesn't leave, since she wants to stick with Omid, and isn't quick to run away from her friends due to not losing everyone. Plus, Krista might be able to vouch for them, assuming she's still alive. By this point, they've met Jesus, and Omid points out the goofiness of his name. They eventually arrive at the gates of Richmond, and Conrad tells Max that they've got Clementine and Omid here and are willing to trade. This surprises everyone, but no one can fully react due to David showing up. He pretty much ignores Omid, who is asking him about Krista, as he's more concerned about his own reunion with his family. David takes Kate inside, and the others go into quarantine. He then returns to collect Javier and talks to Joan, only for Joan to kick Javi and his group out of Richmond. They go to the location, David leaves them, and he eventually shows up as well. Conrad dies if you don't give him his gun, so that is definitely very sad. Omid and Clem show some resentment toward David, but he informs them that Krista is safe and AJ survived his sickness. Krista took care of him, but she ended up relocating and he's not sure where. They'd have to ask Ava or Lingard, as those are the two people she was closest to. She wasn't exactly fond of him after making Omid and Clem leave, so she opted to isolate herself. The gang faces off against Max, Badger, and Lonnie, with Omid staying with Trip and Conrad. After winning, Jesus parts ways, and everyone else goes back to Richmond. Again, not too much is altered here besides Clem's conversation with Javi mentioning that Omid was too awkward to tell her anything about periods. Luckily, Ava gives the location of McCarroll Ranch to Omid and Clem, thus prompting them to leave Richmond and go after Krista and AJ. They give Javier their best wishes, hoping he's able to fix this mess. It is a possibility that Javi and Gabe have a tougher time pushing the truck without Clem's help, but I'm sure that they could still do it. Joan ends up capturing Trip and Ava, resulting in Javier being forced to choose between them. The episode's ending plays out the same, but with Clementine and Omid making a return, and Conrad doing the same if he's alive. They had second thoughts, leaving everyone to fight alone after becoming so close with Javier. Plus, with the herd, it's much harder to be safe while leaving. If they're risking their lives, it might as well be for the people they care about. Omid chooses to stay in Richmond to help those in need with Eleanor, as he remembers how he was after his injury in the first season. He would never have survived without people looking out for him, and he wants to do the same for others. So the rest of the episode plays out the exact same way, though maybe Kate could survive if Clem went to Richmond, since Omid would be there to help fight. By the end, Javi cuts Clementine's hair and says a final goodbye to her and Omid, hoping that they can reunite their family too. But that's going to be the end of What If Omid Survived Part 2. Hope you guys enjoyed the addition of Krista, even though she didn't really do too much in this part. Next part will be a bit different. As always, I'd like to give a huge shout out to our members, Ellie the Plug 2, Wax and Parrot Fish, Paul Keen, Hazy Brush, Davisville 84, Willie, Very Classy Demon, 23 Days Later, River Lamphere, Aiden Kearns, Yeah, Zombie Warlord, and Joel. If you want to get exclusive access to awesome perks like early videos and also priority comment replies, then make sure you do so becoming a member for just $2.99 a month. It helps support the channel, and I appreciate it a lot. As always, tell me if you like this part, tell me what you think will happen next, comment your requests for future videos, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.